Absolute evil. The villains are coming together before the heroes in this universe, and based on its whole ethos, it makes sense. Now, I made a short about absolute evil and the rise of the Absolute Justice League, but I want to talk about it some more. I'm Sash, and this is Casually Comics, and it's absolute time. And of course, because it's be spoiler time. Now, the villains have been on the rise across the Absolute Universe for some time. In different books, it's occurring in different ways. They've had different heights of dramaticism. But the Absolute Evil one-shot from October of 2025 is the first time so many of the key players from across the books have gotten together. Now, one of the questions I got asked about this was, do you need to read this? And while you don't need to do anything, I would say that Absolute Evil is worth reading for several reasons, especially if one is into the Absolute Universe. Absolute Evil is a setup, expository type of one-shot. What it does is reaffirm / re-explain the concept of the core tenets of the Absolute Universe, while also expanding it by exploring some of the characters therein. This is useful because it has been a while since the DC All-In Special, which was where the Absolute Universe was created and started to be explained. That was in 2024, and it's been a while. Of the Absolute Trinity, so Absolute Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, those books have been going for a year, time of recording. And also, people have been hopping into this universe at different times. Some are only reading one specific book, so a centralized issue like this, setting the tone and history, is useful. And for those invested in the universe, interesting. And also, some people coming to this are newer to comics, and so for some, it's going to be very new information. The story's title is buried at the end. It's Absolute Justice. It's written by Al Ewing, who Absolute Universe-wise is writing Absolute Green Lantern, and some of the energy of that is going to appear in this issue. The art is by Giuseppe Camuncoli and Stefano Nessi, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr. The story opens in the past in 1951. Which is significant for a couple of reasons. On a metatextual level, that was a time period where superheroes were not their most popular. We're also very close to the coming of the Comics Code. Now, as for in continuity, this is a dark mirror of a core event, a key moment in JSA history, the Justice Society of America. In this story, Hawkman willingly gives up his secret identity to the Un-American Activities Committee to sniff out communists. Now, the JSA precede the JLA, both continuity-wise and also just chronologically. And initially, the JSA hailed from another Earth. But when the Earths were all collapsed into one, they were set up as the predecessors to the Justice League. And the cause of their disbandment was the refusal to adhere to the McCarthy-era request of unmasking. Although, the idea of this being what caused the team to disband in 1951, which was also the year that All-Star Comics, which they featured in, was canceled, was introduced before Crisis, in the defeat of the Justice Society story in Adventure Comics 466 in 1979. So layers here, lots of layers. Especially because in that, it's Hawkman who declines, so there is some salt about how he acts in this story. So right off the bat, this establishes a link, but also breaks it. It establishes the importance in the lineage of that heroism by having it be severed. This universe very much does not have a JSA, and it's been hurting it ever since in terms of how the heroes have arisen or not arisen. You've seen this play out across books, like in Absolute Flash, where one is shown Jay Garrick succumbing to a lab experiment gone wrong while working with a Thawne, who would likely, based on the name, be an ancestor of the eventual Reverse Flash, Eobard Thawne. This accident, however, is part of how Barry Allen finds himself allied with Eleanor Thawne, and on a different path that veers him away from being the Flash, but also leaves him in some ways equally inspired by Garrick, just in a different way. Now, in the current timeline, we get to see Absolute Green Arrow in his Arrow Cave. He is very much in hard travel and heroes mode. They make some references to characters from it, like Jubal Slade, who they cast in an Epstein-style role, which is what most people were talking about, and I was just like, hard travel and heroes. He even says some lines directly from it. Why not me? All this stuff I have, this money, what does it do? What do I do? What are we actually doing here, any of us? Because it's killing us, man. Some moral cancer it's rotting us inside. I'm in a tracksuit, Roy, a tracksuit. This speech works well because it's very in character for Queen in general, but also ties in to the base rules of this universe, which is something that this issue is going to talk about in depth. Now, from Ollie, we cut to Hector Hammond, who is a core villain in the Absolute Green Lantern books. He's arriving for a meeting while telling Jubal not to worry about Ollie, that he just wants to feel self-righteous and they can buy him off. Hector Hammond is a bit of a brash jerk, and later on, even more this issue. That's one of the things this issue does, is give a bit of a sense of each of these core villains and also how they interact with each other and some of the tensions therein. You get to see a bit more of their personalities in this more slowed down setting, away from the action of their main books. And also some of them get a bit more of a chance to speak than they normally do in their core Absolute titles. So here we get to see Veronica Cale from Absolute Wonder Woman, Hector Hammond as mentioned, Ra's al Ghul from Absolute Superman, who's still rocking that Vandal Savage look in this universe, Eleanor Thawne from Absolute Flash and her black lipstick, and the Joker from Absolute Batman. Cale is set up as the boss / orchestrator of the meeting. She is a character who's been around for a while in the mainline universe, but can sometimes fly under the radar. Whenever I talk about her, I do sometimes get a who? She debuted in Wonder Woman 196 in 2003 and was created by Greg Rucka and Drew Johnson. Initially, she was meant to fill a kind of Lex Luthor-like role, but for Diana, which made it a bit difficult for her to establish herself in the mainline universe off the bat, because there were always those kind of comparisons for some, like, we already have a Lex. Even though as she went on and there were later company reboots, she did start to establish herself a bit more. However, in my opinion, she's faring better here in this universe without that comparison. We have her as National Security Advisor and the director of Area 41. Lex is seemingly being positioned quite differently. If we're doing coffee orders, I'll take a macchiato, sweetheart. No, this room is not for games. It is not for play. Speak of work, do not speak. Who in the hell do you think you are? They do a good job establishing that the villains are bad in their own ways, like they add that little layer of misogyny to Hammond, commanding arrogance to Rage. The Joker is wound tight enough to snap, and they're also extra tense around him, which we'll get to. Now, admittedly, since the Joker doesn't have his distinctive main universe look, how they let you know he's the Joker is by hammering home that he doesn't like jokes and calling him Laughing Boy ironically and the like. It reaches almost parody levels at some point. It almost becomes a joke, which if that was the intent, well done. Some may enjoy it, others may find it to be too much. Some already don't love the idea of a Joker who does not laugh, although he will laugh. Again, we'll get to that later. Also, they say no jokes, but in Absolute Batman number 11, Bane said that he joked and even said that he grinned. Maybe he just doesn't joke with them, or he's changed since then. Now, Veronica Cale launches the meeting with some history, a history lesson of their universe, which is nicely layered and has a lot of references. For example, Wesley Dodds the Sandman debuting in 1939, the same year he debuted in real life. He's also standing in front of the New York World's Fair entrance, and the comics he debuted in New York World's Fair Comics number 1. It's a nice touch. It shows a knowledge and fondness for the history of DC lore and its vastness. Now, Dodds does invent his signature gas gun, and he does become the Sandman, but he's killed and his gas is taken away and used by the government as a weapon of war. Was that lethal gas brewed from Dodds' stolen notes? Ask the conspiracy theorists. Did it win us the war? Ask the historians. They'll say yes. Now, Wildcat is also shown and also given the correct year of entry. His costume is straddling that kind of goofier tone. Wildcat's costume can look either goofy or terrifying. It really depends how you draw it. He does start off the same way, clearing his name after he is falsely accused of murder, but he veers later when he accepts a bribe and then decides to stop being a superhero. I'm curious about this corruption, where it arises from, if it's yet another linkage to the lack of JSA, because in the original Golden Age stories, one of the things that inspires Wildcat is the presence of Green Lantern, the existence of Green Lantern Alan Scott. So it may be that, but that may be a reach on my part. It may just be meant to juxtapose Batman, since Wildcat is also a non-powered hero and in some canons trained Batman in the mainline universe. Here he's kind of used as a contrast because, as the Joker annoyedly points out later on, Batman didn't take the money. He's very salty about it because he had tried to bribe him through Black Mask. All of these examples are to show that consistently the heroes, or who would be heroes, fall down. They're stopped seemingly by the very nature of the world itself, its intrinsic systems. Now, the last example they show is Iron Monroe, which is very interesting from a metatextual level because they place him earlier. They place him in 1951, so they place him before his chronological debut, which was in 1984 in Young All-Stars number 1. But that story he debuted in was set in the past. But he's serving the same purpose in this series as he did when he was created. Iron Monroe is a Superman XP/replacement. He was set up to replace Superman in the Superman Tales from World War II after Crisis on Infinite Earths, which created a timeline where Superman debuted far later, so he couldn't have been active for those adventures. So some of the stories that happened in the past, which would previously have been on Earth 2, they are then given to JSA heroes, the ones that wouldn't cause overlap or other characters. This story also positions Iron Monroe as a proto-Superman, and they're not subtle about it. 1951, Los Angeles. Iron Monroe, a movie stuntman and a real freak in nature. Rumor had it he could stop a bullet at 50 yards and outrun a locomotive. He decides he wants to fight a never-ending battle for truth and justice. You will believe a man can die, because that's what Iron Monroe does. 3 out of 100 examples throughout history, there have been individuals who acted outside the status quo, and the status quo has dealt with those individuals one way or another. Who remembers them now? So it goes, and so it has always gone. Until now. Now, the start of things going wrong from Veronica's perspective is the Gateway City incident, which introduced the world to Absolute Wonder Woman. She is baffled why people deferred to her, listened to her, didn't respond to the normal order of authority. It bothers her, and she views it as giving rise to other people breaking the status quo. The existence of these people causing ripples. It's indicative of a trend. Gotham City, this one is human, we think, but he seems to redefine what human can be. He appears and vanishes like a ghost. He somehow built his resources into the city itself. He wears an axe blade on his chest, for God's sake. He didn't take the money. Look at how bothered the Joker is by Batman already. Also, yes, that is a Dark Knight Returns homage. They show it more than once. It is thematically appropriate because Absolute Batman does reference Dark Knight Returns on occasion in tone and sometimes visually as well. Now, the comic does outline each of the heroes, which is a cool moment for those who may not be reading every Absolute book. But as for Veronica Cale, she proposes that they all need to work together. They can pool their resources and then stop these incidents faster. But Ham is not down. He even calls her Toots. That is incredibly old school. But it's to lead up for some shocking reveal panel, which is Absolute Hawkman coming in with a very dead Green Arrow. Although some will say, and you never know, you gotta hedge with comics, like maybe he'll make it. He probably won't. He looked pretty dead. Also, you can tell that Absolute Hawkman is bad because even his wings are parademon-like. There are several interesting things about this. As a moment, this does have some mainstream callbacks because in the mainline universe, Hawkman and Green Arrow do not get along, largely because of political differences. There have been more chill depictions, but it is a beef with history. So this moment is very in line with that relationship, but just ramped up to match this universe. Also, some are curious about this because Absolute Green Arrow is getting his own series, and so some are curious if that means that's going to take place a bit before, because clearly he'd been active for a bit, or if it will involve some of his legacy characters taking on the mantle and maybe investigating what happened to him. He was already talking to Roy, aka Red Arrow, aka Arsenal, aka Speedy, so you can bring in Roy, Connor, Mia, you got choices. Absolute Arsenal does have a nice ring to it, although this was some of those moments where there were some who were frustrated by it, especially if they were Green Arrow fans. They felt that he was taken out too soon. The disrespect. It's clearly one of those this universe is serious type moments, and those land differently for different readers. For some, they really ramp up the stakes and tension. For others, they may come across as a bit gratuitous, and for some it really depends who it's happening to. That is how we solve problems, Mr. Hammond. Not in a month, in a day. No sitting around the table, no chump change, no games. And no jokes. You can tell that there's something that's happened in the history between Ra's and the Joker, and that it was very serious. Some read their relationship as having tension, some read it as a bit more cordial. It's interesting. You can take it from a couple of angles. Still, they're not sold. Now, Thawne already works with Ra's, but she doesn't want to be beholden to any of the others. As she notes, they're not friends. Also, betrayal vibes in that art. Bitter ex-friend/exes vibes. Or is it just me? I'm seeing what I want to see. This activates the Joker, who does ask politely for the floor, and delivers what for some is the highlight of this issue, which is his speech. His speech on how the world works, its philosophy. They are all villains, so some monologuing is to be expected, even encouraged. It's mandatory at these meetings. Also, the way the Joker is drawn in this is very eerie. His eyes are often dark pits or just creepily focused. Also, the way he's reflected in the glasses of others, there's just an aura of menace and intensity around him, and it comes through very well. So he's only appeared a little bit in Absolute Batman a few times, time of recording. This is the first time he really gets to espouse his worldview. The Joker is one of the few characters who has discovered the secret of this universe. He's discovered the base building blocks in the Omega Particle. Now, Absolute Martian Manhunter is another book that's explicitly linked to Darkseid creating the Absolute Universe. You even get to see this really cool image of it in issue 5, where it's labeled as the first bad idea, which, like this explanation that's about to follow, shows that this universe starts off from a negative standpoint. There's a moral correctness to the world in that evil is meant to triumph. The fundamental forces of this universe trend in one direction, and now we know that includes societal forces. Gravity distorts the universe, and so the river runs, the curtain falls, the yoke is heavy. We accept that man is tethered to the earth. We do not believe a man can fly. With this discovery, we must now accept that there is likewise a moral gravity pulling down, keeping everything that is in its place. Now, in the Joker's mind, anyone who would go against this, there's something wrong with them. They're subscribing to some kind of foreign radical philosophy. He goes on quite passionately about the just world fallacy, which if one wants to, you can boil it down Cliff Note style to people get what they deserve. The philosophical leanings of this are not surprising if one has been reading Absolute Green Lantern or has read much of Ewing's work in general, but Absolute Green Lantern has basically turned the cores into operating on different philosophical levels, so seeing it added to this does track with what's going on over there. It's one of those things that people can engage with on a deeper level if they so choose. Some will be into it, some not, some may find it pretentious, it varies. Now, during this speech, you get to see that the Joker is getting more and more upset. It's a kind of controlled loss of control. His hair starts to fall into his face, more like the mainline Joker, and his eyes start to get red around the edges. He simultaneously starts to look a bit more like his mainline counterpart, but also potentially foreshadowing his potential future monster form. Potential, time recording. But it's quite clear that the concept of things not going the way they're supposed to, it upsets him. He's very aligned with order in this universe, as opposed to the main universe where he's aligned with chaos. He's almost bordering on having that super sane depiction that some creators give him. And imagine being so twisted, so filled with hate, so paralyzed by fear. Imagine thinking in a fallacy that the world could be just. But he goes on to say that the world is just the way that it is. Huzzah! Because of them and because of what they owe to God, which in this case is Darkseid, though they don't explicitly know that as of yet. Darkseid is busy doing other things at the moment. Also, if one is not a fan of Darkseid, he is intrinsically baked into the Absolute Universe as a very big bad, so that may be something that may not land for everyone. And because of his impassioned speech about how they need to come together and fight injustice, it is the Joker who calls them together as the Justice League. There's a fervent energy to his character different from the others. It is good that the villains feel distinct since they occupy similar subject positionings. Now, the Absolute Justice League, it works well for this universe as it's laid out. In a world where evil is stacked to triumph, it makes sense that they would come together first, and that they would view themselves as keeping order. It's got some twisted Earth 3 vibes. It's also interesting to see just how tightly wound the Joker is. It's something that I muse about. He's only appeared briefly and has yet to arrive in his kaiju Godzilla form, potentially. But it is curious seeing how having all the Batman resources gifted to him by a Darkseid universe has stripped him of all joy. That the joy of the Joker seems to have come from the chaos. In a world where he's seemingly guaranteed to win, the fun is gone. Now, Scott Snyder has already stated that the Joker will laugh, at least around Absolute Batman in some way. It's probably going to be horrific. Again, time of recording, things change. Now, as for the rest of the issue, Brainiac and Mirror Master have been spying on this meeting. Brainiac is not to be trusted, and he's trying to stack the League, but he's having a hard time finding a mirror for the Joker. But thanks to the Mirror Master, he's been able to see the other universe, and so he decides that there is a person who might fit, and that's Absolute Lex Luthor, living his best life on a farm with a wife with hair. Can't wait for Absolute Superman to destroy his hair, and if that doesn't happen, I'm not interested. We need Absolute Lex to lose his hair in an edgy lab accident. Also, he has the things that Superman normally has. Take that, Cal. Also, the symbol on his belt, it intrigues me. If you're like, you Philistine, you fool, it's clearly insert obvious reference, then please leave it down below. And that is Absolute Evil. Now, if you're enjoying the Absolute Universe / curious about it, to me, this is a strong addition that you will want to read. It's interesting. It slows everything down from the more action-based main books. For the most part, they vary. It showcases the history with some really fun deep cut nods to the past that honors its existence by showcasing its importance in the effects left and the changes to it. The villains play nicely off of each other. There's room for them to have their own dynamics and their own rivalries. Some do pull a bit more focus. Joker and Kale do stand a bit above the others in this issue, although some will be drawn to just some of the other characters for various reasons. Like my shallow affinity for Eleanor Thawne because she has black lipstick. The issue also in its way makes the heroes shine brighter by showing what they are up against. And it does make everything feel more interconnected, but not in an intrusive way because it's off in its own little one-shot. In general, the universe has started to make reference to the other books, or at least other things that have happened. It's not constant, but it is starting to tighten. Now, of course, this will not be for everyone. It is largely exploring history and setup, so some may find it boring. Some may find it too verbose, a bit too purple in its prose, a bit too grandiose. If one is very familiar with the history, it may not present enough new twists or turns to keep them interesting, though others may enjoy the nods. If one is not already endeared to this universe, this may not be the strongest entry point, though as always mileage varies. Now, some may have hoped for more action or be salty about how some of their faves were depicted. I've already seen many a meme about the fate of Oliver Queen. And for some on the flip side of changing too little, it may be changing too much. Some people have just never gotten behind the core concept of the Absolute Universe. Different strokes for different folks. For me, I enjoyed seeing things being even more drawn together. I'm also a fan of villains and how they bounce off of each other and the heroes, so it was interesting to see those dynamics start to be shored up. This also made me really excited to see Absolute Joker meet Absolute Batman. This issue just took a lot of care with certain details, and it's having fun with referencing DC's past, and the fact that it's sticking to and reinforcing the universe's core thesis, that they're trying to keep it all themed together, is appreciated. Also, in general, as an aside, I found this fandom fun. As mentioned, there are a decent amount of people who are newer to comics or returning to them, and some who are just discovering the fun that can be had with interconnective continuity for the first time. There are many who talk about continuity as shackles and chains, but it is possible to do it in a really organic and rewarding way. Also, I find lots of the memes funny and the fan art fun to look at. What can I say? Transformative fandom for the win. However, if you're a loner like Batman claims to be, that may not be something you enjoy. Anyway, I just want to talk about this more. This universe intrigues me. Come on, Absolute punchline. I'm the only one who wants that, and I'm okay with it. What do you think of Absolute Evil? Which Absolute villain do you enjoy the most? Are you enjoying the line at all? If you're not, you made it to the end. Thank you. And please share your thoughts. And while you're down there, please follow YouTube things. Comment, subscribe, like, hype, hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.